Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. My name is Freddie Jonker, and I'm an account manager at Nintex. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Jaam Automation, a premier partner of Nintex. Today, they will be showcasing one of their solutions that they've built on the Nintex workflow platform. I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew, from Jaam.
Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. Thanks for the intro, Freddie. What Freddie neglected to mention is that we've worked together for about 20 years now, so we've known each other for a long time, and it's my absolute pleasure to attend today's session with Nintex. Also, introductions through, on my screen, it's over on the right-hand side, to the duo act of Ruan Scott and Anton Dutoit, who are joining us on the webinar today. Anton is my fellow director at Jaam Automation, and Ruan joins us from Prospero, who's going to be talking about DetectX when we get into some of the super clever AI pieces of client onboarding, which I'm very excited about. So let's get going into today's session. We've got what I hope is a good agenda for you. I want to cover off a little bit, first of all, on the Nintex process platform, for those of you who've joined and perhaps are not familiar with the Nintex platform, or perhaps not familiar with the entire platform. And then I'll point out some of the pieces that we're really going to dive into today as part of the solution showcase. Then go into the heart of today's topic, which is low code in client onboarding, particularly around about wealth management in today's use case. But this can be used across the board in pretty much any process that you'd like to automate. We just happen to have had the pleasure with working with quite a few wealth management companies across the UK and Africa. And so we've got quite a lot of experience and accelerators in this field, which help us deliver through there. Ruan's then going to talk about DetectX and how you can incorporate AI agents for KYC checks and a lot more around that, which is really quite a game changer in this platform. And then I'm going to delve into some of the implementation details on a use case for one of the wealth management companies where we have been working with them for about a year now, not only on client onboarding, but also on a whole load of their other client and core facing processes, and just do some of the lessons learned as we went through that. All right. By the way, if you have questions, pop them in the chat channel in the Q&A, and then we'll get to those probably post the webinar. A little bit about Jaam. We are specialists in everything business process automation. We have delivered over 100 projects across the world. We've automated millions and millions of transactions for companies. So our passion is about enabling people to not have to sit there and do all of the mundane things, and to automate all of that so that you can do the more interesting side of work. And we have got offices across 3 continents, and we serve 5 continents globally. Pleasure to be with you all today. As I mentioned, let's talk a little bit about the Nintex process platform. So the Nintex process platform has an entire suite of solutions that enable you to do end-to-end process automation. And that really goes right from the discovery piece. So if you're looking to automate processes and you don't really know or don't have a formal way of describing or haven't described how those processes operate. So let's say, for example, we take one of today's topics, which is about onboarding clients in wealth management, and in particular, setting up new portfolio management for them. So let's say you've been doing that for a little while, but you haven't formally documented it yet. Well, Nintex have got a tool which will let you go and monitor how your team are operating and doing that process. So process discovery. What that will do is that will then give you all of the intel to then automatically go and build out a process map that describes what that process looks like. So that then goes into the process mapping and management type piece. In there, you've then got the ability to author those processes, to work with the business to make sure that you've got them right, to do the important piece around actually doing some critique on your processes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and have that all documented and agreed with the business. Once that's in, you have the opportunity to go and automate those, or perhaps you're extending some of the automation that you already have, and you do those by building process applications and by orchestrating work throughout your organization through workflow. Then if you've got systems that are that don't have APIs or that are difficult to integrate with, that perhaps you don't have the ability to run an integration project because teams are busy or they're with another company or there's some legacy technology, then you can go and use robotic process automation in order to go and integrate with those systems. And last but not least, you have document automation, and we use that heavily in today's use case. So as part of processes, a lot of the time what we're needing to do is to create documentation, which will be used internally or sent out to clients. So Nintex has got the ability to go and take all the information that you collect through your business processes and generate documentation that can then be sent to clients, also including e-signatures, so they can be digitally signed and sent back into the process. So this entire suite lets you go and build these solutions, and is sat on low code, which means that it's not really just the domain of developers, but you can also start to get the business involved. And when I come to some of the successes that we had in our project later on, one of the key things for me is that we were able to engage the business stakeholders actually in the design process inside of the tooling, as well as the dev teams from Jaam, which made it a lot easier for people to understand what was going on. Underneath there's a lot of AI that sits inside of the Nintex platform. Quite a lot of the focus on that AI is around about accelerating the creation of the business processes, the creation of the workflows, and the creation of the forms. So really giving you a good way to enable to accelerate that build and delivery piece. And then with Prospero, we've got the business AI that sits underneath there, which you can plug into that solution to add additional value on top of that process platform. Today, the key three areas that we are going to focus on are the business process apps, in other words, the solution that sits there, so wealth management, the workflow piece, so for the orchestration of the workflow, and a lot around the document automation bit are some of the highlights that I'll talk about as we go through today. The other three pieces, if you're interested, give us a nod, give Freddie a shout, and we can set up a session and take you through some of those details as well. All right. So how low code and how the Nintex tool stack and DetectX can be used to benefit wealth management and onboarding and compliance. Let's dive into that. In wealth management, there are a lot of regulatory requirements that you have. And with a lot of our clients, that really is the number one reason that actually they go and do a whole amount of this automation and AI on top of their client onboarding processes. It's to make sure that they can meet regulatory requirements, but also meet their own internal requirements, while still providing a seamless service through to the important people that are investing in their business. On top of the compliance piece, naturally comes reporting, because you need to be able to report the fact that you are compliant. But also, when you're putting a lot of this automation, you have a unique opportunity to go and put analytics around how you are managing all of your wealth management, onboarding and other processes in there. So you get a lot of opportunity to go and use the out-of-the-box analytics that sit with the Nintex process platform, as well as putting your own custom business analytics to really help you understand the flow of data and the flow of clients through your organization, which is quite cool. A lot of our clients are busy scaling up operations, so they're bringing on a lot of new clients into the organization. Quite a few companies are acquisitive, so they've acquired other businesses that they're then joining into their organizations. And in order to scale out those operations efficiently and effectively, and still make sure that you are regulatory compliant, is something that is very difficult to do if you don't put in a degree of automation and you haven't done good process practice as part of that. And with AI sitting under the hood as well and able to really give you that accelerator, this will help you scale out those operations. A lot of us still live in the world of manual data entry and data quality issues that sit there. So there's a good old adage that I'm not allowed to use the real phrase of it, but I'll just say, if you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out. And as you go through your process automation, again, there's a good opportunity here to really look at how you're capturing information. Make sure you do as much self-service as possible. Make sure you do as much validation as possible. Quite a lot of the basics that often get forgotten, and really up your data quality. Even as you go through the process, perhaps you've got your CMS system, or you've got some data sitting about your clients and about various parts of your organization that has got a bit fragmented, or is perhaps not being kept up to the highest quality that you would like. And as part of this process, you can do a data cleansing exercise. So as clients are being brought on, do matching to see whether the data that's been presented to you now, whether maybe there's duplicates sitting inside of your systems, go and clean that all up as part of this process. It's a good opportunity to tackle that. And then, of course, fragmented manual processes. When we work with clients, quite often it's a real sort of divide. Some teams will have a good handle on their business processes and will have automated parts of it. Other teams perhaps are still going quite manually, or they're well documented, but there's no automation that sits there. And others are relying on people with a lot of domain knowledge and expertise, and none of it's really automated. It's still sitting there, all been driven on email and knowledge that's sitting because people have been working in that industry for the last 20, 30 years. So this, again, is a good opportunity to get all of that knowledge, get it into and systemize it, and actually be able to go and organize that and take that fragmentation away and streamline it as you go through. And last but not least, time-consuming document generation. So how many of you on today's call, when you've been asked to go and send out a new client agreement of whatever format, have gone into your document repository, which might be sitting inside of OneDrive, SharePoint, it might actually be just in your file system, and you've taken the last document that you created for somebody, gone in, replaced the names, changed the wording, sent it to somebody for approval, and then sent it out the door. It's an incredibly common document pattern, but actually it's incredibly leaves you open for risk and error prone, and also makes it very difficult if the business needs to update T's and C's or terms and wording, or need to go and update fee structures, etc., inside of those documents, to make sure that those get distributed out across to the team and that they all get managed centrally and that the right document gets into the hands of the necessary recipient. So again, a good opportunity to take that all out by putting in good templating, centrally store it, capture the information in a good way, automatically generate the document, and just get it approved, sent, and signed in a safe, structured way. That's one of the cool things that Nintex brings to the party. So those are the challenges. How we have overcome those: joint solution, low-code platform with Nintex, and incorporating AI with Prospero and with DetectX. So let's go and take a look at some of the details behind the wealth management client onboarding process that we built. And I'll just dive into some of the discrete components of that low-code stack and talk about how it helped us. So here we've got some of the key things which we were driving towards. So one is self-service, and self-service comes across in a couple of forms. One is self-service for your teams. So teams don't have to rely on other people. They can actually just go and manage themselves. So it might be that it's your wealth management team that are able to actually go and start completing a lot more of the the initial data capture about the client and the portfolio products that we're going to bring on board. Whereas before, they would actually put that into a Word document and hand it off to somebody else to transpose that. So they can do a lot of that. There's also been able to take a lot of that and pass it on to the client that's also applying for the portfolio management piece as well. And Nintex has got a really good licensing structure and a very good technical forms platform that enables you to have cost-effective digital forms for internal and external parties that come into play. Inside of the Nintex platform, the way these are built is all low-code. So you put together your forms inside of the technical stack. It's all low-code drag-drop. There is no technical expertise required for these, although it is very helpful if you have that for things like integrating into back-end platforms. And it's very quick to go and prototype and put things in front of the business. So when you talk a little bit later about change management and about delivery of these solutions, one of the critical things that we find at Jaam is that people are very visual, and until such time as you've shown them something, it's very difficult for them to validate and sign it off. So you can prototype and get this stuff out very, very quickly. These forms can run across multiple devices. So when you've got people that are working perhaps in the back office, filling out these forms, but also you've got wealth managers that are going out to visit clients and are sitting side by side with them, filling it out, maybe on their iPad, etc., then that will all work and scale beautifully across those. It can also be completely themed and styled to make sure that it matches your business colors and palettes, etc. If we then jump back, then you've got the automated process flow. And a lot of this is where the majority of that automation happens. So being able to get rid of a lot of the manual steps that sit inside of those processes. And again, in the Nintex stack, there's a lovely drag drop design canvas, which enables you to go and do both the technical automation as well as the automation that will involve people, and put that into a canvas that you can design out without writing code. But if needed, you can put code behind it and call it. And the kind of things that we automated in the solutions that we built in the client onboarding, some of the stuff is you would think is sort of quite straightforward. So what we're doing is actually when we're bringing on a new client, we're doing some of that back end plumbing where we're setting up the internal infrastructure for bringing that client on board. So we are creating accounts inside of inside of client management systems automatically. We are setting up SharePoint libraries or setting up OneDrive folders in order to manage the documents that sit with that client as it goes through. We're making sure that everybody inside of the company that needs to know are notified that a new client is coming in. We're starting to record a lot of the data that we need right up front on the analytics side, so that everybody that's seeing what's happening across their client on board portfolio gets that instantly on their dashboards. So that's part of that. What then naturally comes off the back of that is the additional automation, which I'll talk about shortly with you. One of those pieces is the document generation bit. So as we're going through, in particular, client onboarding, there is a lot of documentation that gets generated, be it internal documentation, be it actually the final client portfolio document that gets signed. All of that gets generated again, and that gets driven through a combination of two core technologies inside of Nintex, which is their workflow platform and their document generation platform. And inside of the solutions that we typically build, there will also be some document management repository that sits there as well. Quite often that is either OneDrive or it's SharePoint, but it can be pretty much anything that you would like. And the way that works is pretty simple and pretty cool. So inside of the workflow process, you get to the point where you want to go and generate a document. You then come in and there's a little activity that says, okay, go and get the template file. You will have stored your document templates, which you will design just in Word, with placeholders for where all of your verbiage needs to go, and you'll stick those into your repository. Nintex will go and get the right one, making sure that you're sending out the right template. We'll then pull it in, and then any information that you've captured inside of the Nintex forms and or that you would like to pull from other systems can then be used by putting that information into the document. And there's a neat little document tagger which makes it simple for you to go and map what information is coming from Nintex, where it's going into the Word document. So it's very easy to go and put in place. And it's actually a really good part of the business process that non-technical teams often get involved in putting in place, because you don't need to be technical in order to go and do that. And then these document templates can be self-managed by the business outside of the automated workflow, which is pretty cool. And that just takes away a lot of headaches as well. What it also means, and we've recently done this for one of our clients, is that they've had a merger with another organization. Now, rather than having to go and redesign their entire onboarding process and worry about that, actually they were able to focus primarily on the document side, rebrand it externally from the automation suite, change the wording that they had mutually agreed upon, and then the workflow and all of the forms just stayed as is, and all that documentation, just new templates, in it came and off it runs. Just saves a huge amount of time. One of the other pieces which I think we quite often forget, but is really critical in this world, is that once we do get tasks that need to be automated, or we need people to get involved, we need to make sure that task automation occurs. And here, this is all about getting the right information to the right people. Now, those people can be external, so it will be your clients. Maybe it's some IFAs that are involved as part of this process as well, as well as your internal team. So making sure that it's getting through to the right people, giving the ability to send it to individuals, to groups of people, manage some of that complexity that sits there, and then giving them the quickest access to go and open that up. It may be that they come into a dashboard. It may be that they're very email driven. So you just come into Outlook and you'll have links that open it up. We do some funky stuff for some of our clients where actually we build Office plugins that sit on the side, which do neat things where they will interrogate any emails sent by your process engine, automatically classify and understand what business process are associated to, and give you quick actions down the right-hand side to be able to go and do things with those documents, which is quite cool, and we can talk about it later for you as well. Now, the way that this all gets done is, again, within inside of that workflow platform. So when it comes time to send work to people, you can dynamically put in rules which will dynamically go and find the right groups to send it to. Now, you might organize those groups in something like Entra. Perhaps you organize them in a SharePoint list. Perhaps you go and get those details from your client management system to find out who the wealth manager is for this and who the teams are that need to go and organize it based on product types that come in. So all of that you can code in. The other thing which, again, super simple, but quite often gets forgot about, is the emails that go out, particularly in this world, and to clients. They really need to be very well structured. All of the wording needs to be approved. It needs to have the right footer at the bottom. You need to have the right header at the top for the corporate branding. And you need to have contextual information sitting in the middle. So whilst it's an automated email, it feels very focused towards that client. A lot of us hate getting that email that just says, hey, we need you to fill in this document, click here. You can still make it very, very professional and standardized with inside of this platform. So all the correspondence coming out from your company is unified and standardized, but still pretty good. Last but not least is the compliance reports piece. So as the workflows are running, there is a lot of out-of-the-box analytics which is automatically going to be provided to you. So when you build these solutions, you'll have 1 to X number of workflows that are running, and depending on how you build them, you might have one which is managing financial advice. Then once that's done, it'll move into actually managing the take on of portfolios. Once that's done, you'll have another one that's managing any transactions that occur against that client's portfolio. So maybe they need to move they want to move funds from one ISA from a cash ISA to a stocks and shares ISA, and there's transfer requests. Maybe they are shutting down one particular product with you. You can manage all that through the platform. Now, all of the process analytics will just be provided for you. So how many of those processes are running? How long are they taking? Which teams are getting involved? Quite critically, are there any errors in those processes? Because things do go wrong in life. So you can see those, catch them early, and then make sure that you look after that client because you know that something's gone wrong in this automated world. So all of that is provided by the platform. In addition, you can log away as much information as you would like and combine that with the process analytics and then light that up. Quite a common pattern that we use is using Power BI in order to provide those custom dashboards. So that real data that you need to see how many clients you're bringing through, what products are they investing in, what's the total wealth value that they have, what's your risk profile across all of those. So, for example, if the client decides that they want to leave, what does that mean for your amount of wealth that you're managing as an organization? And just really give you those full analytics and also provide you with the basis for being able to do that manual regulatory check stuff on top of what Ruan's going to talk about for us in a minute. Now, that does all of your structured process and all of your structured automation. And in today's world, and in particular over the last year, the analyst industries and the big players out there are talking about agent AI and agentic AI. And for those of you who looked into that, it's an exciting field. And we're very excited to work with Prospero, who really bring an incredible set of domain expertise into the AI world, and in particular into these sorts of processes that we're running in. And they go way beyond the hype of agentic AI, and they bring actual practicality and true delivery into this space, which is beyond anything that I've seen with other platforms. So what I did there is, Ruan, just for you, I put it right in the middle, right? Because this stuff is super cool. So what I'll do is I'll drive the slides for you, and I'd love to hand over to Ruan to take us through Prospero and DetectX.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so I've also worked for a few years with Freddie and Andrew, and it's always a pleasure to be the second act, which is hard to follow with the amount of energy that Andrew normally shows on these things. So, but yeah, so I was in the process space before I joined Prospero. Prospero is a company, a Swiss-based company. We have 40 customers in the banking sector, and a couple of years ago we won some fintech awards for best analytical framework and also for most secure transactions platform. So, but what do we do? I mean, at a high level, first of all, so it's a platform, and this platform is a predictive analytics platform. But in this particular space where we are supporting today, on how we support customer onboarding, we'll focus specifically on that, and we'll go a little bit later on some of the extended capabilities. So when, on its own, we do these things, but it doesn't really make sense if it's not part of a automated process that Nintex and a company like Jaam Automation implements today at their customers. But at key points in the process, it's very important to do certain checks, and you could just do a database lookup, or you could just go and try and call a external web service. But we've taken it a step further because we see the companies that do that today in a very simplistic way, they find a lot of issues with that approach. So what we do, we have a very highly accurate detection when we are finding at-risk people in structured databases. These databases, we could be looking at multiple databases, and we use very advanced AI search capabilities where we are finding people that are subject to sanctions, that are politically exposed persons, people that maybe have been blacklisted in organized crime or from the bank. But also sometimes, the customer would have whitelist exclusions, people that have been found to be politically exposed persons, but has previously passed investigations, and you wouldn't want those alerts to be coming up all the time, or even family members. But when we look at certain languages and so on, there's a lot of commonality, different names that are very similar, and so on. So we don't just do a full match. We use fuzzy string matching, which is a very sophisticated AI search algorithm that allows us to do similarity scoring. And I will show you a little bit of a screenshot of that later, where it's doing partial matching, where it's actually reducing a lot of false alerts when it looks at that. So we can do also the batch and manual processing, because it's not just about onboarding, but with the ongoing management of a customer, the regulations are now that you have to do it on a regular basis. So you could actually take batch files, and we look at the net customer additions, check it against these databases, but also we compare the existing customers to the net additions to the databases that we check. And these are structured data sources. So but on the adverse media side, which is unstructured data, which is web, which is, again, from the Pandora Papers, Panama Papers, to organized crime databases, to company registers. This is where we find information about individuals, organizations, countries, assets, even financial instruments that are listed in these databases, sanctioned databases, or so on. But what that allows us to do is in addition to the name check against these sanctioned databases, we actually find people that have not been in sanction lists yet. So there are a lot of examples of people that have already that you would find on the in of these sources, in the adverse media sources, that are under investigation but have not been arrested, or people that have been arrested but it takes a while before they actually arrive in the sanction databases. But with adverse media, which is an enhanced due diligence process, you can now do some early detection of these risky customers, but not just customers, we also organizations and so on. Last thing that we do in the space, which specifically around supporting the onboarding process here, is that we are finding the relationships between people and organizations. This is where we now could use spillover risk, where we could look at this person is maybe not an at-risk person, but they are related, or they are married, or they are a cousin of a very high-risk person, which then you would inherit that spillover risk. And you need to be able to show that. You need to be able to show that you've done the analysis of the relationships and the links. These are the requirement. It's not a nice to have anymore. And what we do is, because now you would find a lot of search results, we use natural language processing. Again, a very sophisticated AI capability around this that allows us to provide risk scores and sentiment scores based upon the content, which is the unstructured content that we find regarding these persons, which helps a lot, because now we can sort it, we can prioritize it, and it makes it easier to identify relevant articles that you would want to be associating with your reporting when you justify either accepting or rejecting a person. So we can go to the next slide. So how do we do that? So we use, as I said, some very advanced analytical methods. One of them are fuzzy string matching. And it not only does it give us some of these passwords, it also allows us to do it very, very, very fast. We do some of these checks also around instant payments. So you understand how fast it is when you need have 3 seconds for us to do a check, a sanction check, and to do an adverse media check, and to check against customer master data for these kind of things. So it's really, really not only very accurate, but very, very fast as well. We do use pattern recognition, which is effectively also looking at common and uncommon patterns, looking at suspicious activities that are not necessarily usual. And that is sometimes the kind of thing that you would look at when you have person's behavior, and when you start managing the customer on an ongoing basis, you start building up a profile of a person. Not only do we then use the scoring to bring the natural language processing in and score the content, you actually now could look at that and look at organizations and also financial assets that you have, because asset screening is also now a requirement to do checks around assets, financial instruments, ETFs that contain certain financial instruments, and which of those could include sanctioned financial instruments. We have part of the models, part of the business rules when we check these things would be adjusting. So we have this feedback evolutionary machine learning that does that, and to help that to keep it current, because financial crime is a very dynamic element. It's not like a health or a biological thing where we also in another industry where we're working, where we detect heart failure that is with asymptomatic people. But this is very dynamic. So financial crime evolves, and because it evolves, you need to have something that adjusts all the time. You need to have something that automatically adjusts the rules, the parameters, and the profiles, which is something we do as part of our behavior profiling. Now, also, because of this big surge of unstructured data and the tremendous amount of research results we're getting, and I'll show you a little bit now in the next screen, but we use large language models to simplify these complex search results. We reduce it to just the things that are relevant. We strip away all the relationships that are irrelevant, and we just highlight some of those things that would actually indicate the relevant information to you. But we do that through large language models. The last thing what we will also do here is which is not on the slide, but something we've just recently implemented. Oh yeah, it is here, sorry. I just skipped it. So we have this 4I principle where it's quite required to, specifically when you onboard people, you need to approve certain investigations, or when people are being rejected, you need to implement the 4I principle, where a second person, assuming they've got 2 eyes, has to then approve a part of the quality assurance in an alert management process. What we've done is we've used very, very sophisticated principles and implemented with large language models to automate the 4I principle and to match that and to really replicate that in a way that really reduces your requirement for additional workforce, for additional kind of hours to spend. So really quite a key thing to do. Okay, we can get to the next one. So just a couple of screenshots to show some of the things. So as it is a full platform, we are, as Andrew mentioned, we are an agent that can be called by the process. We would send information back. We have also our dashboards that will kind of indicate to you how many alerts there are with these particular agents, where you do credit risk scoring, name checking, media search, or behavioral profiling. So there is quite a extensive list of things, but you can start very small with the customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence for this to get the full benefit of a platform, but really easy to start small with onboarding. We can go to the next one, and just showing you some of the things around when you talk about similarity scoring, because of the names, the spellings, some spelling mistakes or different things, where we find people or customer or organizations that we find that are in risk databases. These names will be displayed. A similarity score will be assigned based upon date of birth, country, name, spelling, different kind of things that will give you. And then what you would do is you would identify what benchmark of a similarity score you would want to have as an alert. So for instance, you would, say, run a batch check on my customers that I have now on a regular basis. And if there's a similarity score higher than 91%, create an alert as part of it, or send an alert back to the Nintex process to initiate potentially a sub process for alert management in that particular process. But those are the kind of things that you wouldn't get notified about everything. You can set the benchmarks and you can get only the relevant things to reduce the false alerts. And on the right hand side, this is what the linked analysis look like. So if you find someone, if you're doing a search and you have a relationship to many other people, many other organizations, you can see how that could be quite relevant. And then we would be clearly identifying where the risk people are in the relationships to that person, which is quite important then to understand how a person would inherit risk from relationships in such a enhanced due diligence process. And I think we've got like 2 slides left. Very quick. And this is just one of the search result of the adverse media, just a quick extract. But immediately, this is all coming from unstructured data. And immediately we start to identify any associated people, any associated organizations. It shows any potentially any locations. It'll indicate risk countries. And then risk persons, all the people that we found in the articles when we did a particular search for this particular person, this person would have then associated themselves with these risk people. And then you can go into each and every one of these risk people to see what they are known for, whether it is just politically exposed person or whether it is actually someone that is subject to sanctions. And then even risk organizations. Again, risk organizations are companies that have been sanctioned. And what you then do is you could click on these click on the relevant tick box, and you can then associate these results based upon the fact that it's got a very high risk score and a very high sentiment score to associate with that. This is very allowed with some enhanced due diligence. Some people even use it for ESG. Okay, so that is in a nutshell quickly what we do around the onboarding. But very lastly, because you start capturing all of the information about the customer, who they are, and so on, you can start using that information also for credit risk scoring, also for churn reduction. You want to kind of improve your retention, and you can also then create campaigns around customer marketing, sales optimization, which we have modules for that will allow you to improve your relationship with your customer. Okay, so yeah, and that's that. And as I mentioned, Prospero, we've been doing it for a while. We are a company that's been in over 20 countries, and yeah, we we work very much with partners like Jaam, and we are quite extensively investing in further enhancing the platform in this space. Thank you very much.
Hey, brilliant. Thanks, Ruan. It's always fascinating for me when we think about how you can combine technologies together for a good output. And for any of those of you who have been bored enough to read any of my blogs that go out on LinkedIn, you'll see that's a common theme that I put out there, that actually you need to get the best technology for what you're trying to achieve, combine them together to get the best outcome. And that's really what we do with Nintex and with DetectX. So let's move in for the next sort of 10 minutes into an implementation case study, where I'm going to extend on some of the conversation points that I've myself and Ruan have been running through over the last sort of 40 minutes, and just talk about what happens when we're implementing these in one of our customers. And this is based on work that we've been doing with one of the leading wealth management organizations, in particular in this case in the UK. And I want to talk about some of the challenges that were faced by the business and by us, talk about the implementation approach, and then talk about the outcome. And none of this is at a deep technical level. This is more about how did the process run, how did the project run, etc. So from an implementation perspective, what were the challenges that were faced? And I've broken them out into business and technical, and just taken some of the top ones. For business, in this instance, as within any other project, when you're automating anything that's a meaningful part of your organization, one of the biggest things to run through is change management. And so the ability to get the organization itself to go and have a look at how they run their businesses today, how teams are dealing with information, how they manage work that gets given to them, what are the tools that they prefer using today that you're going to ask them to swap over from. So, for example, from Excel to structured forms, from email to dashboards, from doing manual KYC checks to doing automated KYC checks and looking at those results back. There's quite a bit there from a change management perspective and from an education perspective. Now, inside of this organization, we were incredibly lucky to work with the client lifecycle director and with the IT director inside the organization, which really helped us work with them to make sure that the impact of the business was as low as possible. And also they were in a great position to make sure that they worked with the business to really carry out those reviews, and also put in the overriding decision that says, well, actually, I know I've had this feedback, but this is the way it's going to work, which works. The other piece is stakeholder time. So as you go through and you're automating your processes, you're going to ask for quite a bit of time from people that are already busy. And that can be something that you need to plan for, and you need to push in, and will have an impact on the project timeline, not only from the upfront piece of actually making sure that everyone's in agreement as to what they're doing, but also in getting people to be able to come and get some training on the tool sets, and also being able to make sure that they're, as things are going live, that they're comfortable with what's happening for them. The other is knowledge transfer. So when you're taking something that's very domain specific like this, one of the things which can really add a burden into the team is having to try and take all of the knowledge that you have in wealth management and pass it over to a delivery team that may not have that domain expertise, and get them to understand all of the nuances that sit there, etc. That can be quite a challenge. I'll talk about how we sort of overcome that later on. And then on the technical side, the typical perceived challenges are, how are we going to integrate with the various systems that you have? What is the state of the data that you have, and where do you want to do about that, and where do you want to put it later, and how are you going to run the analytics to sit off the top of that? So those are some of the challenges. So what did we do on the projects on an implementation approach to overcome that? First of all, with Jaam, what we do when we work with new organizations or new departments or new teams inside of organizations we already work with is that we have a very lightweight but defined process that sits. And the first thing we do is we do a discovery exercise. And in there, one of the key things that we do to start with is, hey, we get to know the people. Whilst we talk about automation, really, we're all people and we're running people businesses. So we get to know you and your teams, you get to know us, and we understand and figure out how we're going to work together. The next bit is for us to understand the big picture as well as the business use case. So with this client, we were starting with client onboarding for new portfolio requests, but through the discovery, we understood there was a much bigger picture in play here, that they wanted to go beyond this and automate the end-to-end client lifecycle piece, as well as some of the business drivers that were sitting in there. That then gives us the ability to make sure that we're putting in the right overall architecture, the right structures, capturing the right information that's going to help with that bigger picture. It also makes sure that we've got the right team skills that we can bring to bear, and that we ask the client for early access to some of those other departments so that we can start to talk and seed some of this information through. And that really helps a lot. We look at the technical architecture. Whilst inside of most organizations there is commonality in the types of systems that use, the actual systems will vary from time to time. So we need to understand what that looks like so that we can make sure that A, we can integrate with it, and B, what the length and time and cost will be for that, which then comes into the proof of value. So we'll run a proof of value, which will be a small prototype that's showing the business, okay, this is what it will look like, and this is what you're going to get as an output. So everybody can see and agree that. And really importantly, and I know Anton, who's on the call, is very passionate about this, is making sure that we have the agreed project plan, the known costs, the upfront success and sign-off criteria, and the trackable project success criteria that sits off the back there. Because we all jump into these projects quite excited, then we get to the nitty-gritty detail and all the stress of doing that. And we mustn't forget that there's an end goal that we all have to say, yes, we have met what we needed to meet. And then later on, yes, this is adding the value that we want, that we needed to get out of it. So that's very important. We put that in. Then once we agree all of that, off we go into implementation side. And this is where the Nintex platform and DetectX with Prospero really sort of come to the rescue. Because one of the things which was really good on this project is because we were using the Nintex low-code platform, the head of client lifecycle management had actually spent a bit of time building some solutions inside of that platform before for a few months. So it meant that they really understood how the tooling worked, and they understood to a degree what it could do, and it gave them the picture to say, well, how are they going to do it? So that meant that we were able to bring our team in to take over that build work, but actually the vocabulary and the ease at which the client lifecycle manager and his team could articulate what they wanted to our team was a lot easier. And with DetectX, because they've been running in this world for so long, they understand all that domain expertise on the KYC side, so they can just talk that language with the client, and the integration side of that is super simple. So that meant that actually we took away a lot of the challenge on that side. Then from an integration perspective, the Nintex stack has got 100 plus connectors in it to integrate with systems. And for most of the things that you're going to want to integrate with, they've got really deep integration stuff that's out of the box. So for example, some of the things we talked about with OneDrive, with Entra, we used SQL Azure for a lot of the DB stuff. All of that is just out of the box. We have to write any connectors just there. There is also an integration framework for custom integration, which means when we do need to do custom integration, which we did in this case to integrate through with the content management system that the client has, and also through to DocuWare, we're able to plug that in. It's also the framework that we use to integrate through with DetectX, but it's not random code written anywhere. It's a structured way that gets written, which gives you an activity in the canvas, which can get called, and you can manage that data exchange between the two systems. So again, ticks that box, which is pretty cool. We looked at the architecture design that was in place, and we highlighted a couple of areas that we thought actually, whilst that's okay now, it's not going to grow with you in the future into the business. So we worked with the IT director to agree some different technology pieces that we put in place, such as data warehousing for the large scale analytics that need to sit there. And we put that in place as part of this exercise, which has really helped as they've gone on through there. From the MI side, just as I was liaising with there, we planned up front for it. So MI should never be an afterthought, because you won't have the information that you want in the structure that you want. You need to plan out in advance what MI you need out the back so that you can make sure that you're capturing that information, or that you have a plan to capture that information later. And in order to get that done, what we did is we brought in a specialist team that came in that worked with the client in order to say what information you need to collect, and then highlight additional things that they might need to think about and collect as well as part of that. And then we talked about data ownership. So data ownership, particularly when you're thinking about clients, is where does that live? And when we look talking about technology here, and in particular, if you're looking at the client at the cloud side of the automation platform, where does data ownership live? And that the answer is it lives with you. So for all of the information that's been captured and collected, it's stored inside of your systems. You look after it, you own it, you've got the security on it, so you don't have to worry about that. The other piece is to manage testing. And testing will come in a couple of ways. There'll be some automated testing that happens, and there'll be some manual testing that happens. But the main thing inside of wealth management companies and in client onboarding, where we see the core testing comes in, is actually people being happy and comfortable that the automated system, whether it's giving work to a team, whether it's managing SLA reminders, whether it's generating documentation, whether it's doing a KYC check, is getting them to be comfortable as part of the testing process that they're getting the output that they expect. So a lot of it isn't really down to, is it working or not? It's is the output correct? And that's one of the key things that the business need to bring. And last but not least is, when you first turn this stuff on, particularly if there's, you're rolling it out to new members, and this is the first time they're going to see these new forms and these email alerts and these dashboards, is that we put a hypercare team in there that say, hey, for the first X period of time, we're going to have people on hand that we can just support you if you need to ping us on Teams, if you need to have a phone call, if you want somebody in a room. We have a hypercare team that looks after you just to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. And that really helped us. So we took the first project from start to finish. The discovery piece took us about 10 days, and then the delivery took us about three months end to end to get in, run and roll, and has been now used for the last year successfully. So it takes us into the outcome. So end-to-end client onboarding solution was comprised of 6 workflows, some of them quite big, some of them a bit smaller, 25 digital forms across the different pieces that sit there, 30 document templates that are used for the DocGen stuff, orchestrating of all that work between clients, the company, and IFAs that are sitting in there, an automated and streamlined process that sat in the middle, including their automated KYC checks, which meant that they could satisfy the updated regulations. In particular, the UK, new FCA regulations come out, which are more stringent on some of the areas that they need to apply to. That gets ticked off, which was kind of the critical number one driver, integrated into their core systems. And we established a delivery platform, a delivery team, and an approach for ongoing automation projects. And since the rollout of that, we've been working constantly with the company to automate additional areas of their business. As Ruben mentioned in his piece, it doesn't stop with onboarding the client. It's continually running through and managing those. Also, the other piece is, with a lot of our clients, they don't want to manage the application, and they would like a single place to go and to ask for help if something goes wrong. So what we do is we put on top an application and platform support capability, which we do a handover of the application to, and has access to the same team that are continually building things with our clients, so that the client doesn't have to worry about the technology. They don't have to worry about the updates and the modernization to the application. They can focus on their business and net new automations, and we take away that, in effect, drudgery work, and we look after the whole thing. And then on the platform support side, we'll be the first port of call, so we can triage and say, well, is it actually a platform thing, or is it actually an application piece? Was it something on a dependent system? And then if we need to, we'll work with Nintex behind the scenes, or we'll work with DetectX behind the scenes if it is something that needs their assistance on. But we'll manage that whole thing for you and just keep it seamless and running. And we find that works really well. So put the care of the platforms and applications in the hands of the people that have built them and know them, and then work with us to automate more and more and more through your organization. Some of the core tech that was used through here, so Nintex, and in particular the Nintex Automation Cloud, Nintex Workflow part, process automation and document generation, DetectX for KYC checking for the AI part of that, SQL Azure and SQL and Power BI for all of the data warehousing and MI, and Microsoft OneDrive for the document storage. So in this case, quite a simple technology, sorry, not simple, a streamlined technology stack, but gives real power to the company. So some of the core benefits that were pointed out to me by the client lifecycle manager, and if I start on the left, so reducing time to onboard a client, because a lot of that stuff is automated and in the right hands and chaseable. Enhanced client experience, because they're not having to double entry information, everything's streamlined and digital. Operational efficiency internally, so real visibility on what's happening and that work getting through to the right people. Enabling them to facilitate business growth without having to hire in a load of more members into the organization, and keeping the costs at a good point. And then critically, which is the core driver, the improved compliance and risk management side of the business. Got the big checkbox. So last thing to wrap up, why would you work with us and choose our solution? Hey, well, it's tailored for wealth management. The technology stack here is really geared towards this. It's scalable and flexible. There are deep roadmaps behind both platforms, which give you the ability to take advantage of the new technology that's coming up and forward with strong updates. Compliance built into the core of those frameworks, and AI, but not the promise of AI, actual practical AI that you can use today to deliver real results. Questions, we're going to take the ones that are coming in the Q&A, and we'll do follow-up later, but we've run out of time on the session today. So just for me, what would the next steps be? So if you need help, give us a call. Quite simple, we'll jump on and we can do a complimentary needs assessment with you, or we'll just spend some time over a Teams call, etc., just talking about what you'd like to automate, what systems you've got in place, what your challenges are, and we can very quickly give you a sanity check to say, yep, this is the right technology stack for you. This is the general size of the project. This is the combined team that we would put in for this piece, and then we can work from that point. So contact details are on there. Last thing for me is just to say a massive thank you to the team that joined for today's session. So that's it. We'll sign off. Thanks, everybody.